Have you ever stood in an airport security line and suddenly felt like every TSA officer was watching you? Like you'd done something wrong even though you knew you hadn't? And wondered for a split second, wait, am I about to get pulled aside? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Most travelers don't realize until it happens to them, there are completely normal airport habits. Things millions of innocent people do every single day that can quietly make you look suspicious, even criminal, to TSA, without you ever breaking a single law. And it starts the moment you enter the terminal. Because TSA isn't just looking at what's in your bag, they're watching how you move, how you pause, how you react, how you hesitate, and how your behavior fits or doesn't fit patterns they see thousands of times a day. And one of the biggest mistakes people make is rushing nervously through security while pretending to look calm, because nervous calm looks fake, forced, and oddly rehearsed. And when someone grips their boarding pass too tightly, avoids eye contact, keeps checking over their shoulder, or answers simple questions a second too late, that delay alone can flip a mental switch in an officer's head, not because you're guilty, but because uncertainty triggers attention. And then there's the habit of over-organizing your bag at the last second, pulling items out, putting them back, shifting electronics around right at the conveyor belt, which might feel responsible to you, but looks chaotic and reactive to them. Like you're trying to fix something you forgot, and TSA notices that instantly. Especially when someone repacks while watching the officers, instead of focusing on their bag. And then there's something almost everyone does without thinking, joking. And jokes at airport security are never just jokes. Not the casual long line today, huh? Kind, but the sarcastic ones. The nervous laughs, the fake confidence. The comments about bags being heavy or mysterious, because humor under stress doesn't land the way people expect. It lands as deflection, and TSA has heard every version of every joke a million times, so when someone tries to be funny at the wrong moment, it quietly raises flags. And another habit that seems harmless is checking your phone repeatedly while waiting in line, especially right before screening, because excessive phone checking can signal avoidance behavior, distraction, or stress. And when someone suddenly pockets their phone as they approach the scanner, it looks reactive, like they were waiting for a signal. And no one tells travelers this, but TSA officers are trained to notice pattern breaks, meaning anything that suddenly changes about your behavior when you get closer to them. And then there's the bag itself, not what's inside, but how you treat it. Because people who handle their luggage with extreme care, like it's fragile or precious, or on the other end, treat it roughly, dragging it aggressively, both stand out, and standing out is what you don't want. And one of the strangest habits that raises attention is over-preparing answers to simple questions. Because when TSA asks something basic like, "Where are you traveling today?" and someone launches into a detailed explanation with unnecessary context, it doesn't sound confident, it sounds rehearsed, like a story practiced too many times. And confidence at airports is quiet, not loud, not rushed, not defensive. And another subtle thing people do is dressing dramatically different from their behavior, like wearing business attire but acting uncertain and scattered, or dressing extremely casual while appearing overly alert and tense. Because mismatches between appearance and behavior naturally draw scrutiny. And then there's eye contact. Too much or too little both matter. Staring intensely at officers looks confrontational, while avoiding eye contact completely looks evasive. And the sweet spot is natural acknowledgement, but nervous travelers often overthink it. And overthinking shows, especially when someone freezes when spoken to, even briefly, because hesitation doesn't mean guilt, but it does mean uncertainty. And uncertainty invites questions. And one habit almost no one talks about is arriving excessively early and hovering around security checkpoints without committing to getting in line. Because lingering without purpose looks like surveillance behavior, even when it's just anxiety or boredom. And TSA watches that more than you'd expect, especially during peak travel hours. And then there's the classic mistake of reorganizing your pockets repeatedly, tapping your jacket, patting your sides, checking for items again and again, which feels responsible but visually resembles concealment checks. And TSA doesn't know you're just making sure your keys are gone. They only see repeated movements tied to stress, and stress behaviors cluster, meaning once one appears, others tend to follow. And suddenly, you're the person getting secondary screening, even though you've done nothing wrong. And one of the biggest misunderstandings travelers have is thinking TSA is judging morality, when in reality, they're assessing predictability. And predictable people blend in. Unpredictable ones get attention. And another habit that quietly triggers focus is challenging instructions, not aggressively, but subtly, like sighing, rolling eyes, or asking why repeatedly about routine procedures. Because compliance without resistance is the baseline expectation. And deviation from that, even mild changes, how an interaction unfolds. And there's also the issue of oversharing personal information. Volunteering details about your trip, your past travels, your frustrations. Because too much information without being asked can sound like justification, and justification suggests someone feels the need to explain themselves, and that alone can trigger follow-up questions. And here's something almost no one realizes: watching other passengers too closely, tracking who gets stopped, who gets waved through, where officers are standing. Because while it feels like curiosity, it looks like situational awareness. Beyond normal traveler behavior, and TSA notices scanning eyes, repeated glances, pattern tracking, and another subtle habit is changing lines too often, jumping from one security lane to another based on wait times, which again feels practical, but excessive switching looks indecisive and reactive. And then there's body language during screening: stiff posture, shallow breathing, clenched jaw. All signs of anxiety. And anxiety doesn't equal guilt, but it does equal attention, because calm travelers move fluidly, and officers subconsciously notice that difference. And one habit that shocks people is excessive politeness, saying sir or ma'am repeatedly, apologizing when nothing went wrong. Because overpoliteness under stress can feel performative, like someone trying to control the interaction. And TSA officers are trained to notice control attempts, even subtle ones. And then there's the way people respond to delays, because frustration, visible irritation, or passive-aggressive behavior shifts the dynamic immediately. And TSA deals with pressure all day, so travelers who escalate emotionally stand out fast. And another mistake is assuming TSA only cares about prohibited items, when in reality they're trained in behavioral observation, which means how you act matters as much as what you carry. And perhaps the most misunderstood habit is trying too hard to look innocent, forcing smiles, nodding excessively, agreeing quickly, because natural behavior isn't exaggerated. An exaggeration signals effort, and effort suggests something to hide, even when there isn't. And here's the uncomfortable part: once attention is on you, it rarely disappears instantly, because officers build context over seconds, not moments. So one small habit stacks onto another. And suddenly, your routine trip turns into a secondary screening you never expected. And none of this means TSA thinks you're a criminal, but it does mean you've drifted outside the invisible comfort zone of normal traveler behavior. And the safest thing you can do is be boring, predictable, calm, efficient, because at airports, blending in is power, and confidence is quiet, not forced, not defensive, not rushed. And once you understand that TSA isn't judging who you are, but how closely you match expected patterns, your entire travel experience changes, because the goal isn't to avoid rules, it's to avoid attention. And most travelers never realize that until they're standing off to the side, shoes in hand, wondering what went wrong, when in reality, nothing went wrong at all, except a few habits that looked wrong at exactly the wrong time.